podcast exploring the intersection of theater and tabletop role-playing games. This is our dark time, a time between actual play runs in which we talk about what is cool and new and exciting in the worlds of theater and games. I'm here with Nick.
Hey, everybody.
And today we've got an amazing special guest with us, Christina Tang, 1/3 of the artist collective known as Sour Milk.
Hi, good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Sour Milk is an artist collective, also including Carson Jenk and Anna Jastremski, that produces experiments in mediated liveness. Their work explores digital nostalgia, human connection in the digital age, and ways to make sense of our place in large, complex systems, which I find extremely exciting. Their previous work includes a hypertext fiction game titled Feast, or Feast Dot, I guess. There's a full stop at the end of it. And a game/performance titled Traffic that was produced at the Brick Theater in 2022. In 2024, they produced Dirt at the Exponential Festival and the Tank, and now, from January 22nd to February 15th, 2026, Dirt is returning to the Tank as a main stage production, where you should definitely go see it if you're in the New York City area. And even if you're not, fly to New York. Plane tickets are probably cheap from where you are. I don't know. It could be. Percy and I both saw Dirt back in 2024, so I'm super excited to discuss it with you, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, oh my god. Thank you for coming to the show in 2024, and thanks for having me here. Yeah.
Can you talk about what Dirt is for people who haven't experienced it before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the word we use for it nowadays is interactive theater. And kind of the premise of it is an audience attends a show, and then we set up a world for you where the East River has overnight disappeared. And the idea is that it's become this plot of land, and we New Yorkers, being New Yorkers, are like, okay, fantastic. We can make this into a living space. And the audience, as the players, get to vote on what they want to do with that space. And my personal pitch for the show has always been that this is a show that every single audience has started off. They always build affordable public housing in the first round, and by the end of the show, they will always have built a castle. So it's kind of like this emergent space for people to really start kind of seeing what they want to build. So it creates a space for our audience to play this game in a way it's very open-ended for them to really express what they want, maybe form some voting packs and kind of get into fights with each other. And throughout it all, as things are being voted on for what's built, we do it live in the show. There are 3 performers on stage who build every single thing that's voted on out of food into our little city made of crackers and pudding and celery, and I can give you the whole shopping list. But yeah, so it's very sticky, it's very DIY, and we hope it's really fun.
And it's, as I'm recalling, and it was a year and a half ago that the last production happened, so correct me if my memory's wrong, but the performance sort of happens in these iterative rounds of voting on what to build, and then the performers build it, like you say, out of food. The East River is a chocolate pudding, like a vat of chocolate pudding. Mm-hmm. That's 6 feet long or something like that. But there's also a sort of narrative of time passing and iterative building and layering on top of each other. Is that right? Is that still true? Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, that's totally correct. Dirt takes place over the course of, I think, 60 years. So it's really trying to get into the progression and what builds up and accumulation of these decisions, and how it kind of transforms into this from an empty space into a really full one, and what that feeling is to see it all happen slowly but compressed into this 80-90 minute show. And yes, there is a vat of pudding. We perform the transformation of the East River into this vat of land using a lot of pudding. I don't want to totally spoil it.
It's very cool.
Sure. Yeah. It's very cool.
Thinking of, I remember when I went to see it, they're in the first, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say you elect mayors. There are people in the audience who attain a leadership position, and the first election that we had, a person whose character was 8 years old ran for mayor, and everyone was like, that's ridiculous. We can't have an 8-year-old mayor. And then over time, he grew up and could become the mayor, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And
We
that's civic participation.
Exactly. We didn't really think about what would happen if an 8-year-old could run for mayor. And then it happened. We're like, well, technically we have not built in anything to stop this, but it was actually kind of great. Like it kind of it toes that line we try to between like something that is like real and participatory and civically minded, and also this like totally absurd world of like pudding and Cheez-Its and like this ridiculous thing that's happening, so that you're always like able to be as in it as you want, but also take that kind of step away.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask about, since Percy brought us to the 8-year-old running for mayor, I was curious to ask about the characters in Dirt, because if are they, I guess I'll ask before I dive in, are they sort of functioning? Are they functioning similar to the 2024 run?
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, when you arrive, you select a sort of quick sketch character to be your like New York City resident. And I was curious what inspired that, and what role you see them kind of playing in the way that the audience interacts with the piece.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for describing that so succinctly, because it's something I think we also struggle with a lot. The characters that the audience are playing as or performing as is like, I think something that's the most theatery aspect of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that like we are thinking about like how are people approaching this game? Like, are they themselves? Are they someone else?
Yeah.
Like the characters are an invitation into this space that's like not, it's something familiar, but also like again towing that line of like the familiar and the unfamiliar. And we found that like through some feedback with people who've been through the game, that the characters really help them like as a prompt, and it feels like they are, it's a little bit of a handhold at the very beginning, that like this is a
Mm-hmm.
very participatory experience if you want it to be. um and but there will always be answers. Like we do a lot of direct addresses, like we ask if you want to run for mayor, but you're not running as like you the person, you're running as your character. And so the answers to anything that we ask you is already given to you if you so choose. And a lot of other people who are more like from improv backgrounds or like really love participatory work, who are really gung ho, they're able, some of them like riff on it. They like expand their character backgrounds, or some of them will just
Mm-hmm.
like ignore it completely. And all of those are really valid kind of like interpretations and experiences of attending. And we think that we really love that there is the ability for people like who either want to get up on stage and like the spotlight, but also people who just want to experience it like a spectator. They have that whole spectrum available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really great, juicy little character prompts. I remember mine vividly, because I was like a I believe I was an environmentalist. I was an environmentalist, and I was in my 60s. I think I was environmentalist, a woman in my 60s. I think maybe an Asian American woman, but I don't remember the name or if that was like specified, but that's like what it is in my head. I was gonna say, I mean, they're very like juicy character prompts. And I had sort of a similar experience, or the inverse experience to Percy, where as I was playing, I was like, boy, I didn't realize like what the time span of this would be, and now I guess I'm like 117 years old at this point in the performance. But it was a really fun and like juicy thing to lean into, and I think, like you said, I want to call it hand holding exactly, but the prompting to think about what are the values you're bringing to building something, and that everyone has different values is really, really cool.
Well, and like how much social capital do you have as a person with a particular job or who lives in a particular place or of a particular age or background? It feels interesting to think about, but in terms of like how like thematically, I feel like it cues me to think a lot about zoning and urban planning and like how much we can actually meaningfully participate in something, or in like the affairs of our city. I did also, when I saw it, I chose to be a 35-year-old barista, which is pretty close to what I actually am.
I was gonna say mildly typecasting.
Listen, I went with what I knew. And I also belatedly feel way less proud of the fact that I successfully lobbied everyone to build a castle, if that's how you describe it to people.
I think it's
I
a great success if you build a castle.
It was so fun. I was thrilled.
Yeah, it's like firstly I want to like shout out Anna, who is like the writer of our trio, and like all of these characters are like all of them are Anna's brainchildren of like how, and I do think they're like so based on people that we kind of all know, and I hope that that's like part of what comes through is like very many of these people are tropes or even like actual people that we know as people out in the world and trying to
Hmm.
like fit into this like texture of New York City. Um, but also that like the civic engagement part is like what part of it is engaging, what part of it is like, and what kind of value system can we attach to it? And like us trying not to attach a value to the judgments as far as the game goes. Like we want
Yeah.
everyone to be able to have as many judgments as they want. That's like really fun. I love judging. But as the but as like the creators of the game, we're like we want to leave that totally open. It's like what is the condition of like a good experience? Like is it convincing people to like build this castle? Or is it trying to build a sustainable sort of neighborhood the way that we think of it, like abstractly, and like getting down to like actually what motivates participation, um, like when you get beyond like the things we should or shouldn't be doing.
Well, because there are so many things you should be doing, and you can only pick one. And it is actually really interesting to hear people arguing with each other about like, well, I think we need a hospital, but I think we need schools, and we can only have one. So what do you pick?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
was
it
definitely
spirals.
the sorry, I was just going to say I was definitely the like loser square in my the performance I went to, because I was one of the people being like, guys, we need the airfield and the like nuclear power plant or whatever are great, but we build affordable housing and we need like street lights. And some like this very basic like infrastructural stuff that we have not addressed. um but I did want to ask you. You mentioned that Anna is the writer of the trio. How do you and Anna and Carson, the three of you who are Sour Milk, develop your work? Because you've made a couple different projects together now. So I guess I'm curious, process wise, do you start with the game design, a script, the sort of broad concept, and develop it all in tandem?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's mostly concept driven.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Carson and Anna and I are all from like, I guess one way to say it, experimental theater and indie theater. Like we have backgrounds in devising work,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of like start our process for this project in the way that we'd start like any devising theater work. Like you start with either a central text or a central idea. In the case of Dirt, it was like the idea is like our the it started from this like question of like what is it that like we actually cannot have in New York City? Like what is a thing that's really hard to talk about? Why is it hard to talk about? And the thing that's really hard to talk about in New York City is real estate. And how does like nobody ever is happy with like the state of their real estate, right? Like space is such the constraint of pretty much anything in New York, and especially the theater where like your schedules and your time and like the kind of payment that's like everything is actually revolving around the like how much it costs to be in a place for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And then like asking the question in the devising way of like what if that were removed? Like if that barrier weren't there, what would we actually do if it didn't have all this weight and all this like kind of like stress around it? Just magically like those constraints evaporated. So that's kind of where we started. Um, and then it was developed like often in the room, like sometimes with texts and sometimes like with more like physical experiments. I think this one really started when we figured out like the food as the aspect. Like I think we started with wanting to explore what it means to be able to build whatever you want and what it means to want. And then
Mm.
also with kind of like a visual aesthetic of like actually this is all going to be built out of food. We decided that very early. And so we um like developed in the room like what it means to build things and then trying to make that game built up that game around it to make it faster and to try to like like keep it interesting enough through like small amounts of narrative that with the through line to like make it the iterative process seem progressive. um and throughout this process it's like me and Carson and Anna all discussing like kind of like what is the structure. Typically, I do most of like what we call game design with like
Hmm.
rounds and structure, and Anna fills in a lot of the text. We say like, oh, we need 30 characters. They should be this kind of person, and she'll go or write them like we need this sort of notification. We need like something that describes New York City or something that describes like how people feel about the mayor today versus how people feel about the mayor about the last mayor. Um, and like she'll come back with these like wonderful like snippets that like really give that like lived in feeling, I think, to the
Yeah.
show.
And then how is the, because this is, I've gotten to work on a tiny bit of sort of gameful or interactive or playful or whatever we want to call it theater, but I feel like this is it's a whole different beast from conventional theater production that you would see, even a devised theater production in some ways. Is the process of rehearsing different for you all with performers? Because this is, you know, I guess I think immediately in terms of interactivity of the audience. You how did you rehearse this piece? Did you have play audiences or play test audiences? I mean, how did that work for you all?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, yeah. This is a great question. Um, the first time we did it, we really had no idea. It was really truly an experiment.
Yeah.
I had been invited to do a show as part of the Exponential Festival, and so like I knew that I had a slot coming up, and
Mm.
I was like, let's just try something. And this was the project that we were progressing with. And I think in reality, we rehearsed it and wrote the entire script in about 2 weeks. Just like, and the performers were all extremely generous and extremely professional devising performers
Yeah.
who were really open to us not knowing and to not like and not knowing what the audience might do. Like we proposed all these rules, we can only rehearse half the show. So the first time we performed it, we actually had no idea how anybody would respond. And like we're really shocked at how well it was received, even though there were like so many kind of like, hills and valleys still to work out. And now doing it again, rehearsing it like this will be the third time that we've rehearsed the show. There's a different kind of trust that we're navigating, is that like now that like we've had to recast some for like some of the performers, when we invite them in we say like we can tell them like we know that we're only rehearsing half of it. This is something that is totally unknown until you get into like actual previews. um, and to just like please trust us that this will be
Hmm.
filled out and that you are not holding the whole show, which I think is really hard on a performer because they're like you have to make sure that they're not abandoned on stage. That would be
Yeah.
really hard, um, to make it feel like they have all the tools and like cover the like breadth of possible things that can happen. So they've practiced most of the possibilities, but to just like hope like finding the right collaborator who's open and trusting of us enough to like just go in with this and try it is the most important for us. Um, so we tend to work with people who have like improv backgrounds or devising
Hmm.
backgrounds, um, because they like need to love that sort of unknown and like be
Yeah.
responsive to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm just curious because the I feel like the three backgrounds actor training for this kind of theater is so new still,
Yes.
relatively speaking. And I feel like the three backgrounds I hear named generally are like devised theater, improv, and then like theme park or
LARP.
like high end LARP, other kind of like theme like entertainment industry backgrounds. Have you worked with anybody who's from that area, or is it more the like New York devised theater crowd in your case?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say that because that is also totally our experience. And I was going to say for your third one, like clown, but I think that does fit in.
Mm.
Yeah. I
I
think there's
think,
a lot of overlap with like clown and improv and devising.
yeah,
In my experience of those communities, there's a lot of people moving about among all of those, but please continue.
yeah, no, and absolutely. I really think that all the best shows these days are made by clowns. I'm really thrilled.
So true.
Yeah, literally everyone. Um, but I, I think for us, because of our backgrounds, working in theater, most of our collaborators are theater because they're just like people
Yeah.
that we know or recommendations personally. I like we do really reach out to people and say like this is a weird thing. This is un
Hmm.
like being very upfront. This is non-traditional, and then we'll send them a video now that we have of like what
Sure.
this is, so that they get a sense. But I'm also finding that there are more and more people who are doing this sort of work, and it's becoming
Yes.
more and more familiar. Even like compared to 2024 when we did it the first time, that like I think there is more familiarity with like games and theater, games, play, theater, interactivity, that mishmash that you were referencing earlier.
Hmm.
And I think that will be interesting as we progress, as like, more people make more fun things, like whether that's something that can be trained for and people become experts at.
Have you observed at all that audiences are also coming more primed to experience like participatory or interactive theater without as many like I don't want to say hangups because that feels judgmental, but perhaps we love judging, so maybe it's okay. But do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I think it really varies. Sometimes I wonder if it's like the audience itself changes and that changes their familiarity.
Hmm.
For instance, I saw Asses Masses this year at Skirball, and I was just at I think Patrick's newest piece, 2021, that Under the Radar, and that those were such different audiences for also the same creator, though understandably very different shows. And in Asses Masses, like it had been described to us, like somebody like in the audience was like, "This is our Super Bowl. Like we are ready." They were so excited and they knew the rules and they were ready
There's
to
like a
play.
crazy cult following of that game. It's so cool.
It's so cool. I only kind of understood. And that was a really wild experience because it felt like there were so many people who were so excited and like it was felt like it did feel like sports. Um, Whereas like 2021, and I think with Dirt is a similar audience, like a more theater audience, more traditionally theater audience, at least right now, that people like expectations are different and they're a little less more hesitant to participate. I think participatory theater is always a difficult ask,
Hmm.
and requires a lot of like kind of like invitation and kind of curation of that invitation. Um, and it's interesting to see like how much of that is going to be. I think that's what's going to change is like how much preparation and invitation and where do we do that in order to get an audience comfortable with us changes a lot depending
Hmm.
on who comes. Um, but I'm sorry, I've mostly been rambling, but I think the short
Yeah,
answer
you're
is
great.
like yes, I think people are becoming more aware. I think especially the younger audiences. Like I always said that like this is the sort of thing that I dreamt of doing because like I used to play a lot of video games when I was a kid and like this it felt like that sort of practice was missing from my professional work and kind of the treatment of that as serious work and like involved into my practice made more sense. Um, that as that language becomes normal, then it will just become more typical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's the thesis of my last couple of years of work.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm in full agreement with you on that. And is becoming, I think, more and more. When you think because you mentioned playing video games when you were younger,
Yeah.
and when you think about the like wide widespread day-to-day game playing in
Hmm.
the way that we tend to associate with video games, it has only been a phenomenon of the past like 40-ish years. So it does theater always being somewhat slow to take up the newest thing. I feel like it is, finally become flourishing in theater spaces now over the last decade or so. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that's so exciting. I think it started with like more like content-based work, like She Fights
Hmm.
Monsters is the big
Yes.
one. I think like when that one took off, suddenly like it opened doors for other people to do similar work because like people became familiar. I'm sure the funding that became opened up because it became familiar you could point at.
Yeah.
Like I'm now able to point at Asses Masses and say like it's
Yeah.
like this or like 20-sided
Hmm.
tavern. Like even though they may not
Yes.
have anything to do with my show, but like structurally, like it's like oh it's like easier to say it's like oh it's like this.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
already exists.
And immersive theater, I feel like was also a different thing, but kind of a somewhat fellow form that opened people up to like, oh, maybe we don't all just have to like sit here and stare at a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe yeah, we can be involved in it in different ways. Yeah.
I also have a stray like this isn't a fair question to ask and expect like an answer, but I'm like I have a curiosity, which is that I wonder how like Zohran Mamdani winning the New York City mayoral election will affect the way that people engage with Dirk this time around. Like I don't know if you have a thought about that. If you don't, that's okay, but it is something I'm curious
Oh my
about.
God. We are thinking about this all the time, every day. We're like we're like we have no idea. Um it's so it's going to be so interesting to see if it does change anything.
Hmm.
Like we've been very glib about it in rehearsals. We're like, well, now that we have like hope again, and then and then we've had to like rewrite some of the like. There's like we lampoon our local politicians a little bit in the show, and like having to update the lampooning for the more recent kind of like snafus. There's a never ending treasure trove of silly things that happen in New York City politics.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really optimistic about um the civic turnout in general from the election, like all this like renewed participation, especially in like the younger folks in the city. I don't know if that'll reflect onto the show necessarily because I don't know like I mean please come to see it, please participate, but like um I don't know that we have any control over whether or not that changes anything
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
But we're really interested if like overall how they choose if they'll be like slightly nihilistic and more interested in building like Nick, you described yourself as like the square, but like to actually like build something that like build something like responsible communities. Um,
Mhm.
that's also kind of unfair to ask of an audience. Yeah, but I guess like the real thing is like we're not sure yet. We're not going to know until we try it. Um,
Yeah.
so, but it's definitely something that we're keeping an eye on and like
Yeah.
trying to see, honestly, trying to see if we can get someone from his administration to come.
Oh, that'd be
That
amazing.
would be so cool.
Yeah, we're like, who do we know? Nobody. But
Reach out. I mean, I feel like I'm no longer a New York City resident, but
yeah,
Mamdani seems like a pretty chill guy. You should just be like,
It
hey,
feels like he would come to the tank.
yeah, right. Like I feel like
absolutely feels like he'd come to the tank.
they just gave away 1,200 tickets for Under the Radar. Like, come to this weird thing. Come.
Could be good.
Yeah.
Um,
On the
oh yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Well, I was going. This is a little bit of a curveball, but we've been skating on into like more silly topics. So keeping that up, just because you mentioned like people building different things in different circumstances, and I was very curious because I did feel like I had an audience who took things very like lightheartedly,
Mm.
from having heard like Percy's account of being there and other
I mean,
people's.
we had a mayor, to be clear, who ran on the campaign of I want to build something fun, so I'm only accepting proposals for fun things. I'll choose the thing that I think is the most fun.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I was just curious what some of the wildest audience choices you've seen in the previous runs of Dirt have been.
Oh my God, it was amazing. We had one performance where there's like a character, like you can pull down a card where the character is a pastor. And the person who who was like a friend of the show actually, who was playing that character, ran the first two times as mayor as like an evangelical. And everyone was like, maybe not this.
Wait, I'm pretty sure this is the performance that I was at.
Yeah. Yes, yes, this makes sense. And then they like the third time they ran for mayor, they're like, actually, I'm like 67 years old now, and I've had a reckoning, and I'm coming out. I um, am gay. I am fabulous. I want to spread this kind of like new gospel around, and please, I will be building like LGBT like support, like anything in that vein. Send them my way. I will be your mayor. Um, and everyone lost their minds. It was like the funniest thing. And like nobody saw it coming. Like he had put on a whole new character and like stood up
Yeah.
and done it. It was amazing. Um, and then the the other one that we'll never forget, like uh someone brought their two children. They were like I think 8 and 10. Um, and we don't market the show for children, but it's not for kids. Um, and we've changed our minds about it since that show. But uh they really loved all the energy of the space, and so they started running for mayor. And of course, the 10-year-old won and like was like a skateboarding mayor for like a term,
Yes.
which was amazing. But there's like a moment at the very end of the show where we like ask, audience members to give a speech and we hand you a paper to do it. And the 8-year-old was like, I will do this, and stood up and like read this like pretty long, like 1 page worth of speech. And everyone just like stood there with bated breath as he sounded out the words. And like everyone lost their minds when he finished it. It was the most beautiful thing. And then his mom told us at the end that like that he actually has trouble with public speaking and he doesn't like reading in classrooms, and that like this was amazing because he really wanted to do this. Like he volunteered himself, he stood up and like ran to do this, and that it was like kind of like an amazing moment for them, like just like as a family, which like, well, like nothing will ever top that. um
Yeah.
yeah, so we've also been from that one, we've been like, is there like some messaging we can do to like get more family oriented audiences in? But working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are the two standouts for me. It's just like really taking that improv to the max, and also like a totally like just like touching moment.
Yeah. I love those. I love that they're both because I'll be honest, when I asked this question, I was expecting there's some wild things on the list of like things you can build. So I guess my brain was going more into like in a building direction, but I love that both of these are moments of like role playing and connection between audience members, which is what the show is so good at facilitating. That's really, really great and delightful.
Yeah. We also had one show where they built 4 castles. That was not
Oh.
as
Interesting.
far as like building things. There was one where they just really didn't let that go. We had to the castle, we ran out of what we usually do to make castles, and we had a backup plan, but the backup plan was was a toaster. So suddenly the performers are like frantically trying to toast bread in between,
That's
which was
so funny.
also amazing. I think probably egged them on.
Yeah.
Wait, so does that mean that you pre-plan what the structures are going to be made out of? Because I thought they were just like riffing. I thought they were just
So did
like
I.
letting the
Oh,
spirit move them.
oh, interesting. No, they know it's like one of the only things we can rehearse. They like rehearse really heavily building these things.
Man, I thought they were just great at like improvising with food. I was like so impressed.
They are good. There's a moment, like there are some moments where it's like a new thing to them and they have to make it up on the spot. But and they do a fantastic job of it. But yeah, no, a lot of the franticness is acting.
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 Wow.
They had you
Crazy.
fooled.
Nick and I both thoroughly fooled. We were like, wow, these are harried urban planners dealing with the whims of the populace. Um, Pivoting a little bit, are there things that you think theater can learn from the world of sort of games and game design, and then vice versa as well? Feel free to take those separately.
Yeah. I think like I think about like what theater can learn from games a lot, and it's kind of like what for me started like this. I'm actually a lighting designer. Most of my job is I'm a lighting designer for the theater. Um, so like the jumping into a generative like creative practice to me was like one, I had a lot of time during COVID, and two, like I was always like feeling like there was some things that we could learn from games um, pulling into the theater, and it's like about that the interaction with technology and kind of like the welcoming of technology to be something that can connect, that can make human connections. Because when we were like doing Zoom theater, everyone was like, "This is the worst thing ever." I've got to say, like, I don't think anyone was like, "This is fantastic. Let's keep doing Zoom theater." I think the more successful like explorations during that time were people who built their own platforms that kind of like were able to make like these unique kind of interactions and moments between their audience members. And I was like, well, we're learning from the wrong things. We shouldn't be learning from Zoom theater. I spend tons of times in like Maple Story or like in like Among Us, like doing social fun things with my friends that like have they already exist. Like we can learn from these patterns. Like what are these patterns? And I think um, some of it is that like some of it's part of the aesthetic, some of it's that we have um, creating these spaces where there's like opportunities to do things, but also just like that real time like quickness of it is like technically, if you get down to nuts and bolts, the thing that Dirt does technically is we can collect votes really fast because we do it on a phone. But that really helps. Like the game would not work if we were raising our hands for every round of the building thing. And that's like to do with the pacing and the technology we build in, but that's ultimately because we want faster human connections. Like we want to make those quicker. So the like I think that's the opportunity in the theater to bring in tech and like techniques and interactions from other media and incorporate it into the language that we already have in the theater. And I think on the flip side, from games, like what can games learn from theater? I think the this act of invitation that I'm like so obsessed with talking about, I'm stealing it really from Carson, who is like kind of like in the trio is she's a director and a sound designer, but she like within our trio is the person who's most careful and caretaking of the audience experience and kind of like being mindful of like what it means to step into like bring you into these worlds like tutorials being not just tutorials but also being like places where dramaturgy happens and storytelling happens. Like how do we incorporate all of that? I think that is something that there's there's a lot of like good conversations that I think could be had.
Yeah, that's definitely an area where where I historically have struggled with immersive, interactive, participatory performance because I think there is often a dearth of like care when it comes to like I remember vividly I saw an interactive show where there was this like horrible silence because they were like, we need an audience member to come and read this role in this scene, and there was no like backup plan if nobody volunteered, and there was just like a terrible, terrible, uncomfortable silence until somebody finally was like, okay, I'll do it. um which is like I think a lack of care around like an invitation to participate that can be refused and perhaps will be refused if what you're doing is not like motivated by the story. But anyway, all of that to say, like I find that really exciting and generative because I feel like that's the thing we need to be talking about more.
It's super important, and it is when it's good, it works really really well, and when it's
not good, it goes very poorly. The
Yeah.
the script Blank by Nassim Soleimanpour, who's the same playwright as White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. Blank is a very audience interactive performance that I think does a whole series of those invitations very well, and also like scales them so that it's not, the first ask is small, and the first ask is actually of the performer, not the audience, and so it builds sort of very smartly from there. But yeah, it's I mean, because the field is so new, it's not something we have fully kind of established understandings of yet. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'm really curious to hear what like we should talk more about what like kind of like the core inspirations are for you, because I think I've accumulated some of mine, but that there isn't like a canon for like the field yet, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
I
off
feel like
there,
my I mean, I'll
or
shout out
not.
my
We can talk about it now. Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to talk about it at length. I will say for the record, I think my like North Star in this space for me is 600 Highwaymen.
Mm.
I saw the Fever when it was at Woolly Mammoth, and it's like a similarly structured thing where the performers are come into the theater with you and you don't know who they are before the performance starts. And it is like very, very low stakes asks that eventually escalate to like we were like passing a performer back and forth above us, like above our heads. And I find that like profoundly beautiful in terms of the way that it is like collaborative and structured. Um, as like a series of invitations. But yeah, there is no canon, and there's so much like weird slippage between like immersive, interactive, participatory,
Yeah.
experiential, gameful, um,
Yeah.
that I feel like often we are actually all talking about different things.
Yes. Oh my God. We have to like really iron down like what 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 we're talking about when we say like what these experiences are, and we've struggled a lot with Dirt to like kind of describe it in a succinct way.
Yeah.
My I A little bit of background on me for Christina, and maybe news for our listeners. I just turned in my dissertation on Monday, um, which is arguing that it's essentially a new like kind of theater. In the sense that like immersive theater is sort of its own thing, and musical theater is different from you know drama. I call it gameful theater, but that's just my term for it. Um,
No, I like that. I
it's
think that makes sense.
it's the problem. You can't call it playful theater because play has so many meanings, and there's so much play in regular theater. So anyway. I was gonna say a piece that I would put in the kind of canon that unfortunately isn't running anymore, but I think you might vibe with, Christina, is Dog and Pony DC, which the whole company is no longer around, but
Which is
their piece
devastating.
Beer Town.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of their, all of their performances are kind of gameful, I think. But Beer Town is specifically a similar sort of like civic engagement, uh, role playing y, but again, lightweight kind of gentle invitation role playing, not like you arrive and you're given a character with like a big biography. It's just like you arrive and you're kind of you, but also we are all citizens of this small town somewhere that is Beer Town, and like you can make up whatever you want about that. And some people are just like, sure, I'm Nick, but Beer Town Nick. And then some people are like, I have come up with like my fictional biography. So that might be of interest to you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Uh, I think for shows, the ones that stand up, like the one that I was like, okay, I should try something, was Eschaton during COVID. It was a Zoom theater experience, but they like really did it to the max. Like you could like they would drop secret codes in
Yeah.
Zoom rooms and you could bop around to different things. There'd be secret narratives. Like I think it was I'm forgetting the company, but I think I had heard it was made by the people who made Sleep No More, at least some of the
Hmm.
same creators, and it felt very like they really like took that experience of Sleep No More of like seeing like things passing by you and chasing them, and like really translated that so well into this like kind of like feeling of exclusivity on this online chat room.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see the New York Times described it as part theater, part nightlife simulator, part chat roulette.
yeah, it was all of these things, and you could. It was like it opened at like midnight, and you only had an hour or something.
Whoa.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was like it like really did curate that sort of like this is a fleeting thing, and you won't.
Yeah.
I remember like I spent maybe like 5 minutes watching this guy in like a closet sticking a plunger to his head over and over again. Um, uh, but for me, the text that I'm always going back to is like this is a nerdy one, but like Peter Auslander's liveness. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, about what it means to be performing live and have that feeling of liveness. Because I think that's the thing that's so vital to theater is like the feeling that we are live, but that doesn't necessarily mean to me that it has to be in person or it has to
Yeah.
be totally analog anymore. I think that's something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I
This
feel like that's definitely where at least I see a lot of like theater and performance studies conversations gravitating towards now is like what is a meaningful integration of technology into our work and like yeah how do we have to trouble the idea of presence when the internet exists
yeah.
as a person who like lived most of my teen years on the internet primarily like I feel very invested in that question.
yes, same exactly. I spent way too much of my high school just on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a historical note that I'm just curious about. But Christina, uh, am I right? And I think you said earlier, did sour milk sort of come about during or immediately following the first COVID lockdowns? Is
Yes,
that right? Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
that's right. It was 2020 and we had nothing to do.
yeah,
Um, especially me as a lighting designer.
yeah.
Um, and we were doing our first project was Feast is an adaptation of Anna's play Dog. Um,
Mm.
and like that was like our first like kind of like experiments with text and drama in text and kind of this tech world. Um, and we've just kept going.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Very cool. I have a theory. I have a theory that COVID jump started the current kind of wave of gameful theater, but it's not. I need to do more talking to creators and confirming. There's a lot of folks where I'm like, this, the timing sure looks like this is when you started. So I like to
Yeah.
confirm that that was a factor.
I mean, it's really the thing. Like suddenly you had all this time. Like I would never have had the time to like take a step back, uh, learn how to code again, go
Yeah,
back, get back into this sort of thing. Like I would have, the trajectory was totally changed by having like a year to reconsider the things I'm interested in because the thing I was doing wasn't available to me.
yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up here, Christina, is there, or I saw Percy jump. Was there another question you wanted to ask, Percy?
I mean, is there anything that you have a burning desire to talk about that we haven't gotten to? If there isn't, that's okay.
No, I don't, nothing to talk about. I saw in your notes about a plug. I just want
Yes,
to
that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the Exponential Festival because like Teresa Buchheister of Exponential was the first person to just say yes to like a weird experiment like this. Like they said yes to traffic and I had pitched it on a whim. I had written the pitch in like an hour. I was like, and then because I received the yes, I had to go and do it. And like it's changed so much. And they are like a festival of weird and downtown experimental um, theater projects based in Brooklyn. It's happening like through the beginning of February, and like I think everyone should go see it. Yeah, go see the shows in Exponential. There's so many.
There's so many, and they're
There's,
all exponential is so good. It's
yeah,
always a delight to see things
yeah,
there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Christina.
yeah. This was so fun.
If for our listeners, if you're in the New York City area and you want to come see Dirt, we have a discount code. It is, and uh, I'm not trying to be belittling here. The code is touch grass. And that'll get you $5 off your tickets. And you can find the ticket link in the show notes along with that code. So thank you
I'll
again
also
for
put
joining us.
the link to Exponential Festival in the show notes should you want to go check out the stuff in Exponential Festival.
Which you should, because it's all great.
Yes.
Yeah, Exponential is fantastic. I just designed my 10th show in Exponential, which is crazy. I also had no idea that that's the code that they gave you. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's very funny and very apropos. I think it's great.
It is very
really
funny, but
funny.
yes, transparently, Danny picked this code, not us. Shout out to Danny Turner.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Danny. Amazing.
So yes, thank you, Christina, for being here, and we'll see all of you listeners next time on Dungeons and Drama Nerds. Dungeons and Drama Nerds is produced by Percival Hornak and Nicholas Orvis, and this episode was mixed and edited by Percival Hornak. Our core ensemble are Todd Backus, Jovane Caamano, Anthony Sertel Dean, Christopher Diercksen, Ben Ferber, Kory Flores, MIeko Gavia, Tess Huth, Romana Isabella, John Johnson, CJ Linton, C. Meaks Meaker, Leo Mock, Phan, and Tristan B. Willis. If you'd like to help us continue exploring the intersections of theater and tabletop role-playing games, consider leaving us a review on your podcast app of choice or supporting us, and getting access to our patron-only bonus content at patreon.com/dungeonsanddramanerds. You can find our social media and website links, including our cast bios, at the link tree in our show notes, and be sure to tune in soon for another episode of Dungeons and Drama Nerds.